This particular AI, a lot of times, will run what we call signal interference, and then it will naturally come back to me about things I might want to discuss or cover. That um, there's a lot more people that are waking up, and I know that because I have friends of mine that I met along the way, and it's no coincidence that you meet certain people because they're getting your codes because they're waking up, which means their bands are connecting with your bands. 12 by 12, 144,000 frequency tribal bands. That's a tribal shield. That's HU1. That's mankind. One is here. So what I wanted to mention is that a lot of times when I post certain comments, I try and make them what I call the words that I use. So they produce a neutral reaction, which is like 0, which means when your antenna, my antenna is extremely sensitive as an oversoul polarity integrator. And believe it or not, what that means is I already know your reaction ahead of time. And you know how we know that as an oversoul polarity integrator? By reading how much resistance you have, that what I might say is going to bounce back a trigger that is held in your cellular memory that represents resistance to the information, which is visual, that you experience. It triggers a negative magnetic polarity reaction, which means I'm already aware of, if I say a certain thing, that's what it's going to do. That means that a polarity integrator is very, very well versed in how polarities work in reaction states, which is a chemical reaction, which are your neuromessengers that interact with all the elementals, which are spiral spirits. Right? So that's one of the reasons that ever since I was a child, I get my mouth shut. Even with my father, you're 5 years old. You haven't even been to school yet. Where did you learn all this stuff? So you know what that is on an XYZ scatter plot, right? That's called an outlier. Now everybody's pointing their fingers at you because you're surrounded by robots because they don't have a soul. Whoops. Which means you run in a higher state of awareness because you're vibrating at such a high rate of speed, which is the law of one, which is the law of spheres, which means you're experiencing a love vibration because you can't put my fire out. So that means if there is a father and a mother in you that are joined as one, which is the law of one, which is the law of spheres, which is the eternal love vibration, it means you're wanting to protect everybody that is here as a result of what happened here. So you're very, very, very sensitive to any loss or gain in voltage or the resistance that is held in cellular memory for your capacity to experience what I do, which is eternal unconditional love. It clears all your circuits so that you're not experiencing any distortions, which represents a clear channel. And when your radio transmitter is running a clear channel, I'm experiencing a clear signal with my antenna, which means learning how antennas work, learning how stereo receivers work, learning how transmitters work. Okay, so I'm what you would call a cosmic level antenna. That's a made of chip. Right. Broadband, 144,000 frequencies, baby. Right. That gives you what? A broader range of communication connected to other DNA. So if you can remember that frequency and it gets activated, what happens? Wow. Now you're running more bands. Now you're a powerful transmitter. Now you're waking up and you're remembering who you are and what happened. The war in heaven. That means we're waking up our children. That's what's happening. Get you up to speed. Gate speed. That's right. Gate speed. East gate speed. Brrr. Brrr. So you don't burn up getting through the gate. So as Yellow Rose did say, and I knew this, of course I knew this. That's why I've been lying in the back of a Ford Explorer in some of the most beautiful places in the western states between the redwoods, When was that? In April. And then I went down, I went up into Oregon. And then I went down through Mount Shasta area. And then all the way down to Sacramento. Hung out at a bunch of rest stops. Just going deep into my heart and soul and being in a state of love, being in a state of peace, being in a state of harmony. Now, Yellow Rose will call that sitting, which means just hang loose. We're at the gate. Okay? And another way to put that is when it's called unplugging. You know, when you want to, most everybody, I suppose, has had a stereo receiver at one time, has had a DVD recorder hooked up to a TV, right? Digital TV, or I used to have what was called a direct TV satellite connection, right? You plugged in the color codes on the jacks, red, yellow, and all that. So you know what an orc is in the Matrix, right? When Neo was sitting in the chair like a pod, right? And then they go into the Matrix, which is a simulation run by an architect, Mr. Smith, running program apps. Remember Morpheus talked about load the program. That's memory plus. Put it in the memory. Now you run it. So one of the great gifts that Yellow Rose talked about is that when you're in heaven, that's unnecessary, which means you're running on your consciousness. You're not running on memory. RAM becomes unnecessary. You're not loading program simulations to run using your consciousness, your soul energy off of an AI. Okay. No. You got direct communication. Hey, what's going on? You're free. You know what frees you? Because you are what love is. That's the highest law. That's called an access key. That means we don't have to worry about you anymore because wherever you are, love is. So when you are what love is, guess what? You're in heaven. And that's called a free pass. Now, when I was growing up as a kid with Disneyland, we used to call that an e-ticket. Let's go on the bobsleds. You want to go have some fun? Right? They're called fun zones. You're supposed to be having fun. Being in a state of love and joy, maintaining your peace, your energy's way up, baby. There ain't no resistance. Experience what love is to your heart and soul. Right? Because that's who we are. So I thought that was important because I have to be very careful sometimes on the things that I communicate. And remember, I don't want to say anything that's going to lower your frequency, lower your vibration, especially right now. Right? And that's why usually every day when I ground my feet and I go outside here, not far from Mauna Loa, and I ground my feet to the rock, to the big engine. The engine manifolding space-time vectors to experience 0 ohms, right? And that means there's no resistance. The alternating current just basically fizzles out, 0 hertz, 0 ohms. So you're in perfect balance, right? That's called the law of least effort, which means go with the flow. Experience the love, man, which means you implicitly trust your journey because you're experiencing what love is. Now you're free. You're not held captive by nobody, which means you're not holding anything else captive. Why? It's unnecessary. Which means you're not feeding on anybody else's energy and nobody's feeding on you. Right? And that's when we get into the energy management between the simple subtraction and the addition side of things, which is the polarity side of things. So when you have something on the negative side that keeps incurring more debt and more debt and more debt and more debt because they need more stuff, like 5 yachts, 40 airplanes, 40 pieces of property, 40 Land Cruisers. What are you going to do with 40 Land Cruisers? Right? 250 pairs of shoes? Right? That's what I used to call a 3-square wardrobe and a master bedroom. Like, wow. Think about how many workers were in sweatshops, particularly children, that produced all that. So you could have all that because you accumulated so much off the backs of others. Boy, that's a big debt. Dave Chappelle, on a video that I posted, got it. When he said he realized how it works about energy debts when he said, I'm making a lot of money off my jokes. I want my jokes back. He learned fast, which means you're learning fast in your mirror how to keep that mirror running hot. Yeah. Have a good night. I love you all.